On this episode of Surviving Outside Sales podcast, we speak to Natalie Boyatt, the inventor and creator of the bevee. We also discuss how she fired her job and how she's building a life and a career for herself. If you like the episode and you want to hear more, hit the subscribe and the like button. Now, let's go. Intro. The Surviving Outside Sales podcast, hosted by Mike O'Kelly, presented by Rhythm AI. The goal is to get in, dominate, then get out. Surviving Outside Sales. Now on with the show. Welcome to the Surviving Outside Sales podcast. I am with the inventor and CEO of a really cool product called the bevee. Or is it just bevee?
Just bevee.
Just bevee. Okay, great. So I'm with Natalie Boyatt. How are you doing, Natalie?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here. Thank you,
Awesome.
Mike, for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us in the Surviving Outside Sales podcast. You were one of the first guests, and thank you so much for joining us. Natalie and I were introduced to each other several months ago through an entrepreneurial group in Tennessee. And I have to tell you, the minute that I heard about her product, I was absolutely blown away. In fact, to the listeners of this right now, I think her product is going to be one of those products in several years where people are going to be saying to themselves, I can't believe that I didn't think of that, because it's so logical and it's so kind of, I don't want to say obvious because that downplays the genius of it, but it is something that, you know, entrepreneurials push for these ideas, and Natalie has done it. So we're going to talk about her past. We're going to talk about how she came up with the idea for the product. And we're also going to talk about how she is living the surviving outside sales life. She got into sales, she dominated, and then she got out. So welcome, Natalie. And let's go back to the beginning. So you started around 16, is that correct? You were in sales?
Yes. I didn't plan on getting into sales, actually. My dad said, I will get you a car, but you have to have a job. So the next day I went to the mall and put in 16 applications for a job, and the Gap hired me. So I became a Gap girl.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So how long did you do that for?
Oh my gosh, I actually did it part-time for 15 years. I know. I actually went to school for advertising, and the joke was that I kept saying, I do not want to be in sales. I don't want to be in sales. I don't want to be in sales. And yet I couldn't seem to get out of sales. And of course, now I know why I was meant to be in sales. So Bevee would not be here today if not. So
sales is one of those things. I don't think a lot of people believe that they're going to be in sales. I think that they fall into sales for various reasons. That's how I got into sales, and it keeps pulling you back in as much as you want to leave.
It does. And it's one of those things where there's, great opportunity to make a really good income, really safe, secure income. But then you also have to deal with, if you're not a high pressure salesperson, like I'm not, it can be very challenging depending on which role you take.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I'm not a very high pressure as well. I always see it as a long-term relationship build when you're trying to sell somebody something, and you can always sell somebody once.
Right.
I think a true salesperson is the ability to sell somebody over and over again and to build that relationship.
I agree. I often say that, sales is really about solving a headache. If you can solve someone's headache, then you're no longer selling. It then becomes conversational. So, that's always been my philosophy is if I'm helping you solve a problem, then we're not really selling. We're just kind of negotiating a transaction, if you will. So
100% agree. So you're at the Gap and you're learning. What was one of the biggest takeaways? Was it interacting with people? Was it learning the culture? What did you take away from that you took to your next position?
I like to say that it helped me so much learn things that you can't be taught in a book. I learned how to interact with every possible human being, their personalities. I knew how to adjust my approach and my delivery based on that person's personality or their, issues that they were having. It gave me such incredible customer service skills. In fact, we've been pre-launching bevee, and I've gotten very few, but a couple of negative comments on social media, and it's been interesting to see how I respond to them. And their response to me back has been really awesome, because that was such an important part of our job, was this excellent customer service. But I think it also helped me learn to, sell people differently. People need to be sold differently just based on their personality and how they respond to you. And I think those were just some valuable takeaways that I'll use for the rest of my life for sure.
100% agree. There's not one way to sell anybody. And
Hmm.
a lot of the advice, it's very frustrating. A lot of the advice you hear out there is this is the way to
Yeah.
close a sale. And I think you get to a certain age in sales and a certain experience level, you just kind of roll your eyes. But there's so much of this advice out there,
I
and
know.
it's extremely frustrating. And I completely agree.
I,
There's not one way to sell somebody. And I can't believe that people are already giving negative responses to a product that hasn't even launched yet. I just, you
well,
know,
I will say it was more, one guy wanted me to hire him to get more likes and followers on, social media. So, and then the other guy he was just whatever. But, it's so funny that you say that because my first job into pharmaceuticals, I'll admit I had a really bad boss.
mm,
She did not care for me one bit.
hmm,
And it's a major pharmaceutical company, and we had to literally go through this detail of how to sell the drug,
mhm.
and it was literally one way, and it was not the way that I would talk.
Yeah.
So I struggled so bad with her. She would have me role play and role play and role play,
Oh man.
and I'm not going to lie, I bet I wound up in tears more times than not. It was so bad.
Oh, that
So
is so
yeah.
frustrating. I worked for a pharmaceutical company where we were told we have to have the sales detail at a 45-degree angle. We have to hold the pen and we have to make eye contact every 3 seconds back and forth. And it was so robotic.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, a lot of the companies are teaching this robotic, and I just never felt comfortable. I never felt
Yeah.
comfortable in that, corporate world where it was just cookie cutter. Everybody talks like this. Everybody says this. This is the phrase you have to use. And I said, well, hold on a second. What if something works in New York City or it works in Fort Lauderdale or Los Angeles that doesn't work in rural North Carolina, where I am
Right.
talking to a doctor in a town of 30,000 people? And that was born and raised in the South. And I know in Tennessee, you're in the exact same boat. People don't talk to physicians like they do in different states. And so what might work in New York City, the guarantee, give me 5 prescriptions today. It doesn't work in the South. You'll get kicked out of offices and you lose a lot of respect. So did you ever get into management? Did you ever want to get into management?
Nope. Had
No.
no desire to. Absolutely not. I've been beating my own drum for so long under the surface, if you will.
Mhm.
It's just, I kind of, I it took me all these years of being in an environment that I didn't want to be in
Mhm.
order to really get the life skills that I knew I needed to be able to be where I am today. And so I've kind of just was kind of biding my time. I like to say I was kind of that lion that you see behind the cage at the zoo, who's just pacing and pacing and pacing, and keeps looking out over the horizon, knowing that that's where I'm supposed to be. So it never even remotely interested me. I couldn't get away from corporate America fast enough. So
No, I understand what you're talking about. But this bevy is not really your first. You've been an entrepreneur for a while. Is that correct?
yeah, yeah, I've been almost creating something my whole life,
Mhm.
and it's interesting that there's been two other products that I almost patented, and a life experience happened to me, whether it was I had a baby or I got divorced. And so a lot of those, those ventures into these other products, they just never, the timing wasn't right. And I now know that's because the products weren't right. They both have been created by someone else, mind you.
Mhm.
But it was, my future was always meant to be Bevy. And I had to go through a lot of yuck stuff to get there. But that yuck stuff is what made me who I am today, and I'll be able to take it with me for forever. So it's part of the journey. So, but yes, I am a born entrepreneur.
Yeah. Well,
So
that was a question I was going to ask. Do you believe entrepreneurs are born or are they made?
I think it's a combination of both. I
Mhm.
think you have to have some level of creativity. There has to be that part of your brain that is fires up more than others. I'm not an analytical thinker. I'm incredibly creative. That was born my whole life since I was a baby. I just thought I thought everybody did some of the stuff that I did as a kid, but evidently it's something that creatives do. But I do think that the life experience, does play into it, because you've got to have some level of confidence and beliefs that you can do something. And a lot of times you don't get all that until you experience some life. You get some miles behind you. And I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now in my 20s or even my 30s. It
Hmm.
took me going through a lot of that stuff to get to a point where, it's like my friend says, what you're doing is really hard. That's why a lot of people don't do it, because it's hard, but I know that I now have the confidence and the life skills to do it. And I'm doing it, so I think it's a combination for
Yeah,
sure.
I agree. I don't think that salespeople are born; they are made, and I think the same as with entrepreneurs. It's a combination of life experiences. If your life is great and you're super talented at one thing, and I'll give you an example: the very, very well talented athletes who try to become executives in their sport don't succeed. And the reason why is they don't have the failure. You know, I
Right.
played minor league baseball and I was not very good. And so I was fired several times. And so I realized, okay, I'm going to have to move and do something else. But if I had played in the big leagues and had a really great career, I would probably still be in baseball, but I would think, oh, well, I know baseball because I was a very good player. And I think when you fail, it gives you an opportunity to look and say, okay, what didn't work? And if you have the resilience, which obviously you do, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs do, real entrepreneurs, is the persistence. You fail and you get up and you do it again, and you get knocked down and you do it again. And it's funny, I think being a baseball player, I failed so often that I was just failing is part of the process. I think if I'd played a sport like basketball, where you're supposed to hit free throws at like 85%, and field goals at 45 to 50%. I think if I was shooting in the 20s, I'd feel like a failure. But in baseball, you fail 70% of the time and considered great. And so it's a sport that really kind of gives you thick, tough skin. And I think that's what you're alluding to, which makes a really great entrepreneur, is that really thick,
Yeah.
tough skin to, you had two products. It didn't necessarily work out. You didn't give up. And I also believe that's something to do with creatives. I think creatives make the best entrepreneurs and best business people because there's always nuance. And I think the success of a lot of things is in the nuance. Do you agree with that? Did you
Yeah,
take that?
100% agree with you. And
Mhm.
to take it one step further, one thing I've learned with Bevy is that I know what my field of expertise is. And I also understand that I can't be an expert at everything.
Mhm.
And, my business partner, he and I have a saying that says it's good to know a little bit about everything, but it's overrated to be an expert at everything. So I know that like my wheelhouse is not dealing with some of the business aspects. So I have partners that help me with that. I've learned that I'm not very good at, creating graphics. So I have a design firm that's doing all of that. I think one thing you have to learn is it's not only are you learning life experiences, but also like just kind of know your lane and kind of stay in it, and I think that's what's helped Bevy get to the level where it is and where it's headed, is because I've learned to accept help and accept a team to make it successful. So I think that's also another key takeaway that I've learned, in this process.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So, was there a moment where you thought of the product and you said, all right, the countdown clock started? Walk us through your process and how you got to this moment.
Okay, this is actually, I have several favorite stories. This is one of my favorites. So 2015, I needed to make some money. I had a very young daughter that I was raising as a single mom, and I kind of was fortunate to get into pharma. I had some friends help me, and I got a very low entry level pharma job. And within a couple of months, that's when the idea for Bevy hit. I had a 10 drink order for one of my offices, and I walked into Starbucks and she slid these two cardboard carriers across to me, and I'm looking at them and I'm thinking, how in the hell am I getting these into my car and out of my car without, making a major mess? And, so when I went to find a solution, I couldn't find one. So I decided to just let's create one. And I happened to have an engineer friend who could do some drawings. I knew of a patent attorney with a very large firm. I called him up. And the funny thing is here I am with this little drink carrier, and he's like a specialist in patents for like medical devices. I'm like, well, how about this little drink carrier? And he said, I will look into it, but don't get too excited. And he called me like 2 months later and said, you know what? I think you may have found a needle in the haystack. So we were planning on getting a provisional patent, which is basically a patent pending. And the day that he was going to file it, he called me and he said, all right, are you planning on taking this all the way? And I said, well, yeah, that's the idea. And he said, I think you need to go ahead and file for a utility. It's basically skipping the whole provisional patent pending step. It's actually going straight for a patent. He said it's going to give you more credibility with investors. It's going to show that you're serious. It was a lot more money. And as a single mom, it's like, well, if you'll work with me on the payments, let's just do it. And I don't even remember saying yes. So that day, and I can't make this up, that day I went out to my mailbox and there was this real simple magazine addressed to me. I don't even subscribe to magazines. I've never even looked into this magazine. And, my mantra that day had kind of become, I have no idea what I'm doing, but if this is all meant to be, just let the doors keep opening because I have no idea what I'm doing. And I opened the magazine, flipped through it real quick, came across an article about a woman who was in corporate America and she had been hiking with her mom in Arizona and got really tired of her water bottle getting hot. So she went about creating a new water bottle and she quit her corporate America job, cashed in her 401k, and had just started to make some traction, around the country. And it was a woman by the name of Sarah Koss, and she happened to be the founder and CEO of a bottle company called Swell. Wow. So I cut out the article and I still have it to this day. And I still get chills every time I think about that day. And, this is 6 years in the making because I was doing it myself. It was slowly figuring out the process. It was getting patents, it was getting trademarks, losing trademarks, getting them back. But I think the day that I finally said enough's enough, it was last year, July, so almost a year ago. I had been working with a company for 3 years and they launched a drug that they really didn't do their good due diligence to make sure the drug was A, going to be something, people wanted, and B, if it was going to be even something that doctors could get. And what I mean by that is through insurance. If a doctor can't get a drug covered on insurance, they're not going to write it. It's not even worth their time. So we were kind of looking at a product that was not going well. And then of course you throw on a pandemic on top of that. Mm-hmm. That doesn't help. And, we all had work from home. And so I was able to really spend some time thinking about, am I doing what I really want to be doing? I'm unhappy. I'm so unhappy and so unsettled. And what if I really just pause everything in my life that's providing distraction and clutter and focus on launching Bevee and focus on just firing my job? And it was in July, I got a call from my boss and he said, look, they're starting to look at all the numbers across the country and yours are not very good. And we were about to get on another national Zoom call. And I just said, you know what? I'm done. So I went upstairs, I had the poster board upstairs and I counted how many days do I have left till the end of the year, minus vacation, 100 days. So I made 10 by 10 squares across this board. And every single morning I would cross off a day and give gratitude and thanks to my company for allowing me to fire them so I could go live my best life. And You know what I did? I fired them and now I'm living my best life. And It was the best decision I've ever made. I've never been as happy, and I still have so many challenges ahead of me, but they're so exciting. And I can't wait to watch them unfold.
Surviving Outside Sales podcast is brought to you by Rhythm AI. If you are in outside sales, check out rhythmai.com. That's RITHMAI.com. The sales enablement tool that will help outside sales teams build their best sales days every day. Rhythm. Prospecting, targeting, and routing simplified. Everything an outside sales team needs, nothing it doesn't. Try for $1 for the first month today. That's rhythmai.com. Now back to the show. We talked about before the show, and we've talked in the past about it's not about the money right now. And I think that's a lot of things. They call it the golden handcuffs for a reason. And I was sharing with you the story of a friend of mine who makes good money, and the money is seductive. And I get it. Everybody needs security and things like that. But I've just always been one that I've never chased the money in my career. I've had opportunities to do so. I've just never done that. I've always wanted to be happy. And I don't say this as I just, work-life balance. But what I mean is I want to be in business. I want to have solutions, and I want to solve problems for clients. That's what I want to do. No matter what field or what industry I'm in, I don't want to be told that if I can find a better way to communicate to somebody, I can't say the words or I'm not doing it correctly. I mean, I had a boss that told me he did not like my style. And I said, "Did it work when the previous reps failed?" And he's like, "Well, that doesn't matter." I said, "Oh, okay. So success doesn't matter as long as I'm doing it your way." Is that kind of what it comes down to? And unfortunately, that's, your story is very similar to what a lot of people have. And so I'm hoping that when they listen to this, you're an inspiration to them, that, what, you can fire your job. We both fired our jobs. We fired corporate America. A lot of people have done that as well. In fact, the guests that are going to be coming on fired corporate America. We're going to have some people that are not necessarily in outside sales, but they fired their job and they went after their dream. And so that is awesome. And it's also a little scary. I mean, I know there's been moments where I'm like, "Oh my gosh, what's going on?" Have you ever been nervous, or have you had those natural thoughts? Because I don't want people to think it's just rainbows and butterflies. Being an
Oh my gosh,
entrepreneur
are you
is
kidding?
not.
No, it's not. And I was going to add to that,
Mhm.
I think it's timing, right? And I tell people that, they think, "Oh, you make it so easy." But you don't understand. Like this is 6 long years, and very, very long years and very hard years. And, I got into pharmaceuticals, corporate America, because I needed to work to live, not live to work. And I tell people all the time that if you will commit to wanting to do something different, it doesn't mean you're firing your job tomorrow. It means that you're committed to wanting to figure out what it is that you can do differently to live a better and happier life, no matter how long it takes. And if you were to ask me, would I do this all again and go through all that long 6 years? Heck yeah, I would. But it was and has been incredibly scary. And I actually told my mom multiple times. I said, this is when I was still with my job, but also knowing I was going to quit. Like I put a hard stop on it. I said, "I feel like I'm sitting on a train track. The train is coming. I just hope it doesn't hurt too bad when it hits me." And it was by far the scariest thing I've ever done. I let go of everything that was secure to me. I took the safety net and I threw it away and burned it. So, absolutely it is scary. I will tell you that had I fired my job any earlier, I would not be doing this. I would be back in corporate America. So I think you have to be just very calculated and smart with, knowing that, you've still got these processes in place. This is not, "Hey, let's just go, right up into the sunset and let's, hope that the book I've been working on is a major bestseller and whatever." And you have to be smart about it, right? Which is why it took me 6 years, to get to that point. And it's but yes, it's a scary thing. But I've learned through this process that one challenge once you overcome one challenge, then all future challenges, there's going to be a way to figure it out. Life will always figure itself out, and it's always going to happen exactly when it's supposed to. And you know I could tell you an incredible story about the name bevee. And I mean, I lost it 3 years ago. I thought I did, and it came back to me this past year exactly when it was supposed to. And so there's so many cool, things that can happen in your life if you just can accept the fact that you may have to be a little patient and be a little, planning. And I tell people, for every awesome, cool story you hear me tell, there's 100 days behind that where nothing happens. And you have to get really comfortable with being uncomfortable, because there is so much hurry up and wait. It's but I've learned that a lot of times those hurry up and waits are because things happen when they're supposed to. So I don't know if that's been your experience.
Yeah, 100% agree. Let's go back to that. So you lost the name. Or you had
Yeah.
it and lost it. Talk about that. That sounds like a fascinating story.
Yeah, it's one of my other favorites. So I actually never really got the name Bevy. And I will tell you, trademarking and naming something is like the vein of my existence. I can't tell you how many names we went through trying to find the name for Bevy. And I finally, when I saw it and I wrote it down, I was like, yep, that's it. That's my name. I knew it. I knew it was the name. And a woman that actually is another entrepreneur, she actually owned it. She has a company out in Seattle and she owned the trademark for it. She was going to do a line of handbags and but she was doing nothing with it. And so I found her on LinkedIn, sent her a message and said, hey, can I buy that from you, that name? And she's like, yeah, sure, make me an offer. So I did, and she ghosted me. I never heard from her again. So, and the thing with trademarks is that if you don't use them, if you don't show like a proof of doing business, like really selling that product, you'll lose it in 3 years.
Mm.
So she was going to lose it in about 2 months. And so my attorney said, let's just wait until it falls off and comes back into the pool, if you will, and then we'll go re-get it again or get it for you. So paid my filing fee, waited. 2 months later, he calls me. He said, I can't believe it. Someone beat you to the punch in the beverage industry and got the name Bevy. You lost it.
Oh my gosh.
And I will tell you, knowing that my mantra was if it's meant to be, let the doors keep opening, that was the first time I felt a door slam in my face. And it really scared me. It really actually caused me to really pause and say, uh-oh, maybe I'm not on the right path here. So we named it something else, something a word I really don't ever want to say again because none of us really liked it.
Yes. Okay.
But it was
I'm
like,
not going to make
but
you
the
say it
ba-
right now. We'll just,
but the baby,
it'll
yeah.
disappear into the ether. Okay.
Yes, but the baby has to be named. So last year, I woke up one day to an email from my attorney and immediately I saw the subject line of Bevy. And I'm like, Bevy? I haven't thought about Bevy in forever.
Mm-hmm.
So I opened it up and he said, well, the people that beat you to the punch for Bevy, they never did proof of business. So they lost it. And because you were next in line and you've already paid your filing fee, I'll know in like 2 weeks if you get Bevy.
Mm.
And so 2 weeks later, I was awarded Bevy. But here's like the really amazing part of the story is had I gotten Bevy back in 2017, I would have lost it
Mm.
because I was not doing proof of business last year. So I never lost Bevy. Bevy came to me exactly when Bevy was supposed to come to me.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
That's
that's
awesome.
just, I know it's fun.
And I said that the one thing about being a boss, being an owner, an entrepreneur is it's the gut wrenching moments where you hear things like that. And, one of the things we had with Rhythm was we started telling people about the website and going to it, and people didn't know how to spell it. And so, Rhythm came from an algorithm. We believe there's an algorithm to sales. And so the last part of it was rhythm. And so there you go. But when people were like, oh yeah, you guys do great like cardiac machines. And we're like, what? And then they
Oh
went
no.
to like RHYTHM.com, because that's how you spell rhythm as far as when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
music. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, did we make a mistake? And so the more you talk to people though, they get it. And when you tell people
Yes.
what it is and the meaning behind it. And so what's the meaning behind Bevy? Is it just a name that came to you? Where did you come up with that?
Oh gosh. So, initially, and I will say this, and I think everyone needs to know this, you got to be really good at R&D. I mean, I am
Mm.
constantly reading and educating and learning, and you will become very best friends with your computer and Google search. So, initially I just kind of started writing words down that involved drinks or carrying things and doing searches online for different ways to spell things and different ways. And in fact, I'm actually working on a second product right now that is about to go into prototyping, and I'm on the struggle bus trying to name it. So here we go again. But and then that kind of turned into, what are different animals that are representative of carrying stuff, or how are they spelled in other countries, and it just, you go on this massive journey of just trying to find something that, I have partners, and so I would run things up the, flagpole to them, and they'd shoot every one of them down. And so it kind of became
Yeah.
this like constant back and forth. But one day I was Googling just the word beverage, And I was Googling it in other languages, and I came across an old English word for
Oh.
beverage, and it's called bevee. And it's like,
Hmm.
I believe it's spelled Beavy. And I just, something about the bevy, it sounded good. It was easy to say. It had the classic two syllables that you really want with a name. So I started just writing it different ways. And literally from the minute I wrote bevy with the two E's on the end, it was like, yep, that's it. That's it. Score. So yeah, it's a challenging process for
Yeah.
sure.
Oh,
It's
I
not my
can
favorite.
I can tell you, even though I consider myself a creative, I'm terrible at that stuff. I remember when we were trying to
Yeah.
come up with the name for Rhythm, some of the names that I had were terrible, and
Yeah.
I know exactly. I'm glad that I have other partners that help me with that. That because if not,
Right.
the names that I would have had were it just did. And that's the one thing is we didn't really focus too much on it, but when you heard the name, it was like that's it.
That's
I'm
it.
sure that's
You
how you
just knew it.
felt with you just know it. Oh,
Yeah,
it's
you just do.
Bevy. And when you told me about the name, I was like, totally makes sense. And even the way that it was spelled is very modern, and it's Bevee. If those of you don't know, I think it's a really cool story about how you lost it, how it came back. I think that's
Yeah.
people say that it's meant to be, if that's what happens. So
This is a classic meant to be story.
so before I didn't want to interrupt your story earlier, but I actually had a moment very similar early in my pharmaceutical career where I did Starbucks for an office and I was only carrying 7. So, I had the 4 and I had the 3. And so I walk up to the building, and it was one of these offices in a big building, and there
Mhm.
were no windows. So it was an interior suite. And with this, those big, heavy, thick wood doors that go from floor to ceiling. And so I'm kind of standing there holding both of these, and I'm like, how am I going to get the door? And I kind of reach out with my elbow. No. And so I just tap the door with my lower foot because I didn't know what to do. And I thought about it later. And one of my friends is like, why didn't you just put one of them down on the ground? And I said, well, that's easier said than done. But, I'm 6'4". It's very difficult to I could have done it, but wearing a suit and having my bag over my shoulder, it's exactly what you're talking about. It's a headache. And I'm thinking,
That's exactly how mine happened. I
yes,
actually got to the office, realized that the door to the waiting room swung into the hallway. So I had no choice. So
yep.
I had to put one down. I'm in a dress now
Mhm.
with my bag. So sliding down this door in heels, I open the door enough to hook my leg around it. And I'm literally inching my way up and with my hips with these drinks trying to get into this waiting room. And I open the door and there's like 10 people staring at me like, what the heck? So
At least you,
that was the moment. Yeah, I
yeah,
did it,
at
but I
least
was
you,
like, I'm
well, to speak on that, at least you made it in. So what happened to me was, I think this is a typical response, and this is a lesson to all of you in the audience. So I just thought the path of least resistance was to tap my foot at the bottom of the door and then hope that somebody opened it. And
oh
then I
no.
waited and I waited. And so then I start reaching for the door to try to grab with like my pinky and my ring finger. And all of a sudden the door pops open and knocks the container of the 3 drinks over.
Oh no.
And it was a patient who had heard in the waiting room and opened the door. And it was this lady, and she's like, oh my gosh. I was like, no, it's not your fault. And I'm standing there. I've got, the Starbucks is dropped on the floor, and I've got the
Oh
4
my
in my
God.
hand. And it's one of those things where it's like, I just left it. And then I walked in and I dropped it off at the front desk. I went back out into the hall, and then I cleaned it up, and it took me like 10, 15 minutes. I went to the restroom in the hall, and I grabbed paper towels and I'm cleaning it up. I walked back into the office, and the staff that did not get their drinks
Oh
were
God.
like, I don't say livid, but they were just, it's disappointing.
Oh
And
yeah.
your reaction was, I need to create something. And my reaction was, I'm not doing coffees again. And that was the
I hear
last
that so
time.
much.
That
Yeah.
was the last time I ever did coffees for more than 4 people. And so that's a lesson to you out there. You can do what I did, which is just ignore, or you can do what Natalie did, which was
Yeah.
solve the problem. If I had had a bevy, and by the way, I cannot wait to get my own bevy because there are just so many opportunities. It's not just for pharmaceutical reps. There's
No,
so
not
many
at all.
times where you have to carry multiple drinks. In fact, I used to be in the service industry, and I used to hate having to carry a ton of drinks to a table. on the tray. I just hated it. I'm not very efficient at holding a tray and all that stuff. And so when we talked, I think it was last fall, I said I could see bars and restaurants loving the bevy. People could walk around with shots, or
Yeah.
instead of just having them on a tray that can easily spill over. There's so many uses for this. To go into kind of who can use this, it's not just for pharmaceutical sales reps or medical sales reps, although it is ideal if you're doing a coffee run. Who else can benefit from the bevy?
So the beauty about bevy is that, the cup holders are actually a standard 3-inch size, meaning picture a cup holder in your car. So, anything that you can fit in a cup holder in your car, you can fit in bevy, except you could hold up to 12. So, absolutely, I definitely could see, restaurants, bars, resorts. I watched this poor guy on the beach one day carrying a tray in the sand of drinks. And I'm thinking, oh my God, like, it doesn't have to be like this, guys. But look, I like to have parties and socialize. So I would love to be able to have a bevy to, bring drinks to my friends, or my daughter having a sleepover, or, taking it out to the pool. Or the cool thing is bevy floats. So if you're somebody who likes to go to the lake,
Wow.
and everybody's hanging out in the water, and like, where do you put your drink, right? We all have that problem. And, even in the pool, I mean, it's great that you all want to hang out. You just chunk that sucker in there. So we'll
That's
probably be
amazing.
adding an anchor feature to it, something that you can add like a carabiner on the end that you can plunk into that water just to kind of keep it, from floating off. So that's probably in the future for bevy. But it's been interesting and talk about timing. Who would have thought that I'd be launching a drink carrier that promotes socialization at the end of a pandemic? I mean, you can't make that stuff up, right?
It's almost the perfect
But
time, because people
it
are
really
going to
is.
be, I know that in my social circle, we're just chomping at the bit to get together. But,
Right.
that's what I said. I really do believe, I mean, as soon as bevy comes out, I think it's going to be an instant hit. And for those of you
Yes.
listening to the Surviving Outside Sales podcast, you heard it first. A lot of people
Thanks.
love origin stories, and they love to know, there's always several cool stories about, well, I knew this band before, or I knew this actor before they got big. And so right now, bevy is going to be huge. I guarantee it. So we're running out of time. Thank you so much for joining me. But before we go, so you're launching the product very shortly. Tell the audience how they can get the bevy, where it's going to be available. Run us through that.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So guys, we are going to be launching bevy in Kickstarter. So if you are unfamiliar with Kickstarter, it's just a way of kind of doing, for lack of a better word, a pre-order. But it's also, by pre-ordering it, you're getting it at the lowest price possible, like that you will ever be able to get one. So two ways that you can help support. Obviously, you can go to bevee.com, give us your email address, and we'll get you added to the list of how you can get prepared and help get you signed up to be able to support the launch on Kickstarter. And you can do it one of two ways. You can either purchase a bevy, or you can just back me, even for as little as $1. So we are super excited. We've got manufacturing teed up, ready to go. And typically a Kickstarter campaign will last about 30 days, and you will get your product within 3 months. So that's where we're on trend to go. So we're going to have a
Perfect
lot of
for
fun. Yeah, we're going to
Christmas,
have, yep,
Christmas
yes, yes.
gifts. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're super excited. And also, one other thing I should note is that, for anyone out there that has large quantity interest, bevy can be branded. So we are 100% able to brand, a bevy. So if you've got an organization or a group where you need, multiples, that we can make that happen for you. So I'm so excited. I've been waiting 6 long years for this. So it's going to be a fun ride, and I would love your support. So
That's awesome. And I know we're going to, in the show notes and also on our social media, we'll be sharing all the bevy. So you've got Instagram, LinkedIn,
yes.
Twitter, any
Yep.
other
Facebook.
platforms, Facebook. Do you have
Facebook.
a YouTube channel?
Yes,
Okay.
we have
We'll
a
have
YouTube.
all of
We
those.
got it all.
Subscribe to all of those, follow all of those, and follow
Yeah.
Natalie and
And
her joiner. Yeah. So,
yeah, and I'll give you the link. I'll give you the link tree link too. That'll have all of those. So make it
okay.
nice and easy.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Thank you so much. I think that your story is exactly what we want to share at Surviving Outside Sales. And so, you know, thank you so much for joining and good luck. We know it's going to be a big success. And hopefully, very shortly, we can have you on maybe 6 to 9 months from now after the launch, and we'll
Yeah,
have another conversation and see how things have gone.
I would love that. Thank you so much, Mike.
Awesome. Thank you so much and hope you have a great day.
Yeah.